It's my pleasure this afternoon to interview Mike Cryans, District 1 candidate for the Governor's Executive Council. My name is Jack Scarborough, and I am honored to be here in this position today.
Well, thank you, Jack.
You're welcome, Mike. And I have, just to start, we have been so well served by so many years by the late Executive Council Ray Burton. And many people have not focused on the election for this position in the past years. Some voters may actually be unclear about what does an executive counselor do within the state. And I would ask you to explain to us those responsibilities and tell us how you are specially qualified to perform them.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jack, for hosting this show. And I think your first question, we probably can fill up a good portion of the time that's allotted. Well, first of all, speaking of Ray, for 16 years I served side by side with him as a county commissioner. Great honor. Wonderful person to serve next to, learned a lot. And I will be very frank, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what it took to run for the Executive Council until you start running and you realize what a miraculous and wonderful and marvelous job Ray did.
Yes.
I will be right up front. I'm not running to fill his shoes, but I am running to do the very best that I can do.
And that's all we'd ask.
And that's my commitment.
Yes.
I guess I should get it right on the table. Another commitment I will make, I will not hold the office as long as Ray, 35 years. Even though my mom is 90 years old and my dad made it to 90, I'd have to make it to 98 to do that. You asked, what does the position entail?
Yes.
Executive counselor, there's several things. First of all of the appointments made by the governor need to receive 3 votes of the 5 members of the Executive Council. So if she nominates, whether it's a Superior Court or Supreme Court or District Court judge, or any one of the deputy commissioners or commissioners for all of the state agencies, she needs to get 3 of the 5 votes. Then all the people that volunteer in this state to serve in a variety of different capacities on commissions and boards, she again needs to get 3 of the 5 to vote. And the final thing is contracts. Anything over $10,000 require the contracts be approved by the Executive Council.
Right.
So those are 3 of probably the main functions. The other one is the 10-year highway plan, which is crucial, especially in this part. And as we look at the roads that we're about to travel on, whether it's today or the next several months with the frost heaves and the bumps and the turns and the twists, we realize how important transportation is for us up in this area, because most of us don't spend a lot of time on the highways like in the southern part of the state, but we spend a lot of time on the roads that go from point A to point B that are, we won't call them back roads, but they're the secondary roads. They're not the highways. The final thing is, I think, and this goes without doubt, Ray redefined what an executive counselor has to be in District Number 1. I think if you're in District 2, 3, and 4, and 5, you probably don't have to do as much with constituent service. But Ray was phenomenal with constituent service. He got out to the communities, whether it was a parade, ribbon cutting, honoring someone who had been married for 50 years, or going to a select board meeting or visiting a fire department that might need something. Ray was always there, but also for that person that needed one little thing done. And I've had numerous people say to me, and Ray used to say to me, I know sometimes I'm their last sort of hope.
Yeah.
And I said that to a lady one day, and she said, he was my only hope. And I thought that was really quite a testament to Ray's service.
Yes.
So having said all that, I would say that the 3 functions, approving the contracts, approving the nominations, and obviously getting people on commissions and boards, the highway plan, and then obviously, which I think should be move forward would be the advocate for the people of the district. If you think about it, so many people will say to me, as now the person running, and Ray had that seat for 35 years, so obviously a lot of us didn't think about what he did, you know. And if you look at it from that standpoint, he would often, you know, try to do the very best he could do in getting out and encouraging people to run for different boards and commissions. I think that's a great thing to do because it's a wonderful way to give back to your state. You might have a special interest in wetlands or cosmetology or you know, the racing or whatever, and he'd say, you don't necessarily have to give me your resume, send it right to the governor. But I knew a lot of them liked to give it to Ray because he would champion it for him.
Right.
And,
Correct.
So, and I think basically that probably hopefully wraps up a little bit of what an executive counselor does, and if you think I'm missing anything, certainly come back.
No, I think you've pretty well summed it up.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And the next question that I ask would be, how can we bridge the chasm of ideology and partisan political divide that makes it difficult for us within the state to work together to find solutions to our most pressing problems?
Sure. Well, I'm not a partisan ideologue. Sometimes people would say it's a weakness, but I think compromise is a good word, not a bad word. I think resolving problems, bringing two parties together. You know, as a county commissioner, I've worked when there's been two Republicans and me as a Democrat, and I've also worked when there's one Republican and two Democrats. I think working together get more done. You know, sometimes it's easy to say, unless I get my way, it's not going to happen. That never results in much good. No. And I'm not a strong believer in not getting things done. I like problem solving. I like getting things done. Yeah. You know, we've done some wonderful things at the county, building a new nursing home addition, building a brand new jail, and you know, sometimes they're controversial, but getting them done was a good thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Both my wife and I have served our nation in the United States Marine Corps for 21 years. Can you tell the veterans of our district why we should vote for you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your service, and your wife for her service, because that's admirable, doing what you did for our country. I have been to the Soldiers' Home down in Tilton. In fact, I'm going to be going back again this week. You know, I honor the people that are there. You know, there's a variety of different things. I'll give you an example. I work at I work past tense. I've been working for a number of years, 10 years now, but I'm actually stepping down in my position at headrest. We do a lot with the hotlines that deal with suicides. Yes. And we know what a huge issue that is. I think sometimes people don't realize what a huge issue the suicide is for the returning vets, especially from the last couple of wars. Yep. So I think substance abuse is another major issue.
Yes.
I think the easiest thing, without trying to go down through all of the issues, is that hopefully they will look at me as someone who will champion for them, and to say in my way as a public servant, thank you for what you've done, and this is what I want to do for you. You know, there's some things obviously that have to be mandated at the state level, but a lot of things at the federal level. But I want to make sure, and I've seen in action some of the stuff that's gone on at the VA. You know, my dad was a World War II, Korean War, and when you look at the great things that are done at the VA hospitals, you know, if I can help somebody get into a VA hospital, to use the power and the effectiveness of the executive council to do that, I look forward to doing that.
Good.
You know, and I guess one of the other issues that we know has been, especially since the Vietnam War, is the homelessness among the veterans. You know, we have to be constantly aware of those programs. Yes. And you know, and somebody said, well, what can you do? Sometimes it's funding those programs within your state that reaches out and helps them.
Right.
Know, so.
And I was not going to address it, but there has been a local program here in Plymouth called Soldier On, which is attempting to establish a 50-unit housing facility for homeless veterans. What would be your approach to that project if you were approached?
Yeah, so many of those kind of things are within the contract process, and you'd have to see what basically the contract says.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at programs that are going to help, first of all, obviously the communities have to sign on. Community development block grants are essential to those.
Yeah.
And so, I think what you want is the best thing where a community wants a program,
Yeah.
and then reaches out and uses some of the grant programs that are available to help fund them, because in a lot of cases it takes a lot of money to especially a 50-unit project would take a lot of money, and it takes a lot of collaborations within a lot of groups.
It does. And how would you facilitate then in the same vein, collaboration between the VA and an independent project such as what I just...
Yeah, I would be sort of at a loss to tell you specifically how I could do it, but I think the VA obviously is a federal hospital, but I know, having worked side by side with Ray all those years, he would get contacts from veterans that need those services. So I think it's, part of it is going to be to figure out how you can work and mesh them together.
Right.
The VA, obviously, you've got the one down here in Manchester, and the one in the area where I live that is so well known is the one in White River. So, now they're developing these satellites where in a lot of these hospitals, the veterans don't have to necessarily travel. They can go to their own local hospital, and they have that. So
Littleton, for example.
Right, Littleton has one. And speaking of Littleton, that's where I grew up. I grew up
Very
in
well.
Littleton,
Yes.
45 miles north of here, and we graduated the school system up there. My mom lives in the same house that I graduated, that I lived in as a kid, and she's now 90. So it's Littleton's a nice community, and used to come down to Plymouth quite a bit to play sports and stuff like that. So, but
yeah, well, that's fantastic, and I otherwise would just like to have you talk about yourself.
Sure. Well, I think I started by saying that I grew up in Littleton, and I went to Littleton High School, graduated in 1969, went off to Springfield College down in Springfield, Mass.
I've been there. I lived next.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I lived in South Hadley.
Yes. Yeah. And then upon graduation, came back and taught at Littleton High School for 5 years. Then went to banking, and was in banking for a number of years, and then went into finance and did some work in that business, and then went into headrest and did that for the last 10 years. And for the last, I'm now in my 17th year as a county commissioner, and working here closely now with Martha Richards. And I should announce that Linda Lauer, who was a representative, is no longer a representative, but now the new county commissioner replacing Ray Burton. She's from the same town of Bath, and she's eagerly looking to fill out his term over the next roughly 10 months. And I think a lot of people didn't realize, especially outside of Grafton, that Ray was a county commissioner, and one for 23 years, only one longer than him, George McLaris over in Stratford County. So, and that brings up a point. Sometimes somebody will say, can you do both jobs? I think you can effectively do both, county commissioner and executive counselor. I think it's something I'm very confident I can handle both. I watched the Best at It, Ray, do it, and in addition, Ray was also teaching at Springfield College while he did it. So he was a man of many hats. I think a lot of times people thought all he did was do that. Plus, he found time to play the organ on Sunday at his church. I'm a long distance runner. Been a marathoner and a road racer all these years, and in fact, from 1971 to 78, I had the best time for New Hampshire at the Boston Marathon, including in 1974, I ran 2:27, which was a state record at that point.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in the last, I'll give you a statistic, Jack.
Okay.
The last 23 years, I turned 40 23 years ago. For the last 23 years, I've run almost 80,000 miles. That means almost 10 miles every single day. And when I say
Yes.
almost every single day, I miss
Yes.
very few days, including the other morning. Casey and I and some others were heading up to Berlin in Coos County.
Yeah.
I get up at 3:30, stayed at my mother's in Littleton, was out on the road at 3:45, ran for an hour and a half, got to back to the house, got cleaned up, and was up in Coos County on time for breakfast. So I did my thing. So
Very good.
And the reason I mention running sometimes, I think a lot of times it's not, I'm trying to promote myself as somebody who's doing all this running, is that I think it gives you an indication of who I am. When I commit to something, I try to do a very good job. I persevere. I think I have great stick-to-itiveness,
Yeah.
and I like to follow through on something. And
It's called endurance.
I think it's, and that's why that's the essence of running, endurance,
Yes.
right? So having said that, that's sort of me.
Yeah. Have you ever rodeoed?
If I ever rodeoed?
Yes.
No, I think once we have a 16-year-old at home, and once in a while he turns the TV on to watch the rodeo. But I can't imagine me being on the back of a cow or a bull. I should
A
say.
bull, yeah, a bull or a horse, either one.
But you know, there's some things, Jack, that I think a lot of times people think of this as an arduous task, and it's demanding.
It is.
I'm not gonna sit here and say it's not demanding at times.
I will not deny.
When you
that-
get up early in the morning, you get home late at night.
Yeah.
And we are probably the only two candidates that have been running in what I call the most unusual weather conditions for any New Hampshire
Yeah.
state official. Now, somebody will say, well, the presidential, they come in for a little while, they're gone, and they
Right.
get treated a little differently than we
Right.
do. But, when you're out there, I think our coldest day was probably close to 30 below zero.
Yeah.
We've seen many snowstorms, and it's sometimes it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours home, and then when you got a major snowstorm, you can always add to that. So
Two or three.
so it makes for a long day. So, but
Well,
the other night, I'll give you one final
Sure.
thing, Jack. The other night was up in Berlin and ended up going on a long snowmobile ride, and in one of those grooming vehicles.
Right.
And we got to the very top, and we saw this moose. And the guy said, "That's going to be your second best thing to see." We drove down. I did not realize this existed. We drove down. We stopped the Snowcat. It's a big $160,000 piece of equipment that grooms the trail.
Right.
We get out and we look over the city of Berlin. It was the most spectacular sight because there we are up quite a distance,
Yeah.
and we looked over the whole
Yeah.
city. It was quite spectacular. So,
Yes.
I mean, it's just one little event, but it's a great opportunity to see this whole state because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize there's 109 towns,
Yes.
4 cities, all are parts of 7 counties. And somebody will say, well, there's only 10 counties in New Hampshire. That's right. It's 2/3. And I was at an event in Claremont, and a guy came up to me and he said, "I know how large your district is." And I said, "You do?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "I have a camp up in Pittsburgh, and I live in Newport." He says, 192 miles from my house to that camp.
Yeah.
That's a big portion of our
That's a
state.
big difference.
It's a
That-
big portion of the state.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. I can relate to that from my experience in Idaho. It's 238 miles from the capital to the Canadian border, and it's a long haul. It's a long haul, but I do appreciate that. And this is a large district, a large area, and I'm hoping that you can give me, again, just to reinforce, if you will,
Sure.
a reason why I should vote for you.
well, I would say to you, Jack, that if you vote for me, and you entrust in me your vote, that I will work my hardest every day that I'm there. I will advocate strongly for the people of our district, which is a very rural district, and we know the other 4 are not, because the other 4 are a small percentage of the land mass, but 80% of the people.
Exactly.
That I will work hard for you each and every day. I will advocate for you, and when I go to Concord, I will not forget the people of District Number 1.
Okay.
And that's the basic promise that I make to you and to all the other voters.
Great. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jack.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.